connection, particularly between fathers, is missed and skipped a lot. That deeper level of conversation is just glossed over a lot.
What caused you to want to be really conscious about your fatherhood?
Seeing the world and how it is and how it's changing. I wanted to encourage my children to be themselves and be unique and to forge their own path.
There's a shift that's happening more and more, I think, in the relationship space of like a desire to have a very clear-cut gender roles.
We're still dealing with legacy and age-old stereotypes. People get shocked when they see a dad who is very active in their child's life. Going with my child to their dentist appointment or their doctor's appointment, that might seem just a small thing, but some people need to see that. It keeps me so vocal. I'm doing it to start to shift perceptions.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have with us today another wonderful guest, a man who isn't just an advocate for fathering and fatherhood, but a man in his own right is an entrepreneur, a content creator, and a man who dresses so fucking stylishly. I feel very jealous every time I see his post pop up on my feed. Today we have with us Robert Douglas. How are you doing today, Robert?
I'm really good. Yeah, I'm really good. Thank you. I'm good after that intro.
I love people to actually show themselves. This find it is like much more rich. So I guess the question I have, the first question up is like, who is Robert Douglas?
What a complex question. Who am I? Well, firstly, I'm a husband. I'm a father of two incredible boys. One's 11, almost turning 12. One's just turned 8. So interesting chapter in our kind of family dynamics. I'm also, as you mentioned, entrepreneur. So I'm a film producer. I've got my own production company where we focus on upskilling crew from underrepresented backgrounds and helping them access careers and move up in their careers in film and TV. And I'm just a chill guy, I suppose, but I'm very conscious of my parenting journey. I suppose that's one of the things about me that's quite obvious from my Instagram feed, that I really think about my parenting. And I've been blogging for the past 7-8 years, maybe. Started off on a blogging on a website, then moved to Instagram, and gone through all of the ups and downs and changes and fluctuations of Instagram. And I'm really back at the moment where I started, which is writing more. I was pictures, I was videos, heavy. I've gone back to writing a lot more because I think it's very therapeutic. It's very good to document my fatherhood journey. So that's what I'm doing at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. And what caused you to want to be really conscious about your fathering and the way that you fathered your children, your two boys?
I think it's just seeing the world and how it is and how it's changing, and the access and the information that our children have that we didn't necessarily have. And it kind of dawned on me the reality of particularly bringing up boys in this kind of era and this time. That was really weighing heavily on me. And early on, I made a conscious decision to really think about my impact on them and therefore their impact on the world. And I want them to be great. I want them to do, I had a great blueprint from my parents. I've had them, they've been around kind of constantly for all of my life up until now. I'm still their child. I still turn into a child when I go to visit them. When I'm back in their home, I turn into a child because they've been around and they've supported me, from day dot in everything that I've done. So I had a great foundation. But what I wanted to do differently, because of where the world how the world has changed, I wanted to encourage my children to be themselves and be unique. That is something that I think previous generations, it was, you're focusing on, getting married, having children, buying a house, going to university, getting a traditional job, etc. All of that for me has gone out the window. And I want to encourage my children to be individuals and to forge their own path. So that's where I really kind of started to think about how I come into that, how I play a role in their lives in that way, and how they see me and how I role model those things to them as well. So that's really where I became conscious of yeah, my impact in their life.
Got it. Yeah, because we do, we're growing up in a very different world to, I'm 41 years old, and I remember being in my, 8, 9, 10, 11, and you'd get your bike and you'd be like, Mum, I'm going out with my friends for the day, maybe. Or, you're going to be around
Yeah,
the area, and you'd say, and your mum would be like, okay, cool, come back at 1 o'clock, for
yeah,
lunch,
for
or,
lunch.
yeah, or something along those lines. And you'd be like, okay, cool, you would. Um, and then you'd roam, you'd be free, and then you'd come back before it got dark. That was the sort of like
Yeah.
blueprint we had. But
Before the street lights come on, you must be back in the house. That's it. And we used to roam, and have no thought about anything happening. Anything. We just used to just roam about and then show up. And I don't even know if we told our parents where we were going, what we were doing. Like, we weren't up to no good, but we were just out. There was no text when you get there or text when you're on your way. We were just out.
yeah, there was no, and they were happy with that. It kind of worked. We kind of exercised some freedom and independence. And, as long as we were, we gave the story of being safe and okay and not getting into trouble, they were happy.
Yeah, yeah. The thought of that now, by the way, fills me with dread. The thought of my children going out and me not knowing where they are, or them not coming back for hours, just out on the street, fills me with dread. Like that is my worst nightmare. It's just I can't imagine doing that with my children at the moment.
Why does that fill you with dread?
Do you know what? I think I really feel like even as adults, we've got too much information at the palm of our hand. And it brings things that, yes, you have to be aware of all of these things. You have to be safe, etc. But it brings things not from your world into your world. Therefore, you think it's part of your world. And that, even as an adult, that puts the fear in you for your children. There are terrible things that happen in the world. Doesn't necessarily mean that is happening every single day in your area, in your, you have to exercise a level of caution, of course, but it holds you back. It puts barriers, unnecessary barriers in your way. And that's why, and I admit, those things scare me. And I'll then not allow my children to have freedoms that they could probably get away with, and I become overcautious and overprotective of them, when sometimes I just need to leave them to do their own thing. Now, there are some things that I think we should talk about a bit later on around digital that I have strong boundaries with, but things like going to the park on their own, enjoying themselves, going to knock for their friends, playing out without me having to check on the Ring camera every 5 minutes. Things like that, I think, really hold me back in allowing them to have more freedom. The freedom that I had quite easily when I was growing up.
And I guess the question that comes to me is, what do you think the impact is or has been on them to not allow them to have those freedoms that you enjoyed?
I think just not failing or making mistakes for themselves, or experiencing things for themselves, experiencing kind of, oh my gosh, I'm late home. Even things like time management, right? I'm going out, responsibility, crossing the road, all of those things, those simple things that, we are with them all the time when they cross the road. We are there to say, make sure you look, make sure you listen out for cars, make sure you cross safely, etc. But if they don't experience that on their own, they can never exercise that skill. And I think that is the impact that we as parents don't necessarily think about. We kind of were overprotective of them without being, you need me, kind of overbearing. We do it naturally. kind of, come on guys, hold my hand, we'll cross in the road. No, you don't need to hold my hand anymore. You just need to be able to cross the road by yourself. And the next level of that is kind of doing that on their own. When I was younger, I used to go out on my bike and I used to ride on the road on my bike without my parents around, without my parents telling me to stop at traffic lights. So we used to just be riding all the time. Now, whether that's safe or not, I don't know. But if our children don't experience that, then, they're missing that level of resilience, that level of independence that kind of we had, I think.
Mm. It makes me think of risk taking. And there's a book called Of Boys and Men by Richard Reeves. And he talks about in the book, like how boys can be on the side of maybe taking a lot of risk. And he talks about stories of his own childhood of like running across motorways and trying to avoid being hit by cars. And, and as I was reading this book a few years ago, I was like, yeah, man, some of the things we used to do, like ride on the road, no helmet, like run through red lights, like ride on the pavement through busy areas, dodging between people, like all these things that were inherently risky that we didn't really think were risky at the time. But then you would, like you said, we'd make these odd mistakes, like you'd hit someone and then you'd have to be like, I'm really sorry, or you'd run away, or you'd pretend it didn't happen. But you also kind of learn this like balancing act of risk and like what you do and how your impact is, though you're not always that aware of the impact because you're still quite self-centered.
Yeah.
And
And it's even things like, learning how to not fend for yourself, but look after yourself. So, for example, like when I was younger, I remember we used to go to these woods on our bikes and cycle around thinking that we were like Tony Hawk or whoever, like doing all of these tricks. And I remember coming off of my bike, getting a bloody nose, getting scrapes and cuts and all of that kind of thing. And if I saw my child do that, I'd freak out. It was quite a big thing to happen, but I had to kind of work out what I did in that situation as a child. I had to get up. I had to make sure I was okay. I had to get back on my bike. I had to find my way home or find someone to help me on my own. And I was fine. I was totally fine in that situation. Yes, it hurt. Yes, my nose was bleeding, but I had to find a way to help myself. And no, I don't want my children to hurt themselves. But part of that is learning that independence, is learning that growing up. So they miss out on those kind of small things as well.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to take a slightly different direction. When you kind of cast your mind back to kind of before they were born, what were some of the fears that you found coming up, if any, about being a father before they came into the world?
Do you know what? I'm quite a laid back guy when it comes to stuff like that. Like for me, big decisions I never overthink. Small decisions and small things I always overthink, but big things I don't necessarily overthink. So I can be quite confident or appear quite confident in what other people might find daunting situations. So when we were planning to have children and, I knew this was going to happen, I just went full in. I was just involved. Even my wife would tell you, like, sometimes I would tell her stuff that, she was like, why do you need to know that? Like, why are you telling me that? Because I was like, I was fully invested. I was kind of ready. I was like, yeah, let's do this. Like, what do we need to do? How do we need to, how do we need to prepare? All of those things. Plus, I was thinking about what fatherhood looked like for me and how that was gonna happen. And I was excited. I didn't ever worry or have any fear around that. I was like, let's do this. But I know, talking to my friends that have also gone through that process, is very different for everyone. Like, their fears were very different. And I did have one point of sitting back after talking to one of my friends, and he was telling me about his fears before his child was born. I was like, maybe maybe I was quite irresponsible. Like, what? Maybe I should have been fearing something. Maybe I'm not thinking about this. Maybe I'm not doing this right. Um, but yeah, I didn't necessarily have those kind of fears or worries. Plus, I knew my wife has lots of experience with children, nieces, nephews, etc. She's always grown up around kids, little kids, to the point where her work is all around young people. So some things I knew I could go to her and say, what do we do in this situation? Like, what if this happens? Like, what do we do in this situation? That she wouldn't necessarily have the answers, but she would provide that kind of she'll be able to have that kind of conversation from drawing from her experience, which I didn't necessarily have. So yeah, maybe I was reckless, but I didn't have those those kind of fears or worries.
Mm. And you were saying there that like some of your friends have had fears and worries. How have you supported them when they've kind of come to you as like a more experienced father and talked about what they're afraid of, what they're worried about?
I think really talking, and this is what I talk a lot about on my Instagram, is really talking about your individual experience. Like, I know one of the things that really kind of frustrates me when I talk to more experienced parents is when they default to, oh, you haven't got, that bit's easy, you haven't got the worst of it, you got more to come. Oh, that's every child. Oh, every child is like that. Every child goes through that stage. And part of it is comforting in the fact of you're not the only one, but also it's frustrating in that my situation is my situation and my child is my child, and I don't need you to tell me that it gets worse or it gets better or everyone's like that in that moment. I want to talk about my situation because, my child is unique and I'm going through that now, so I don't need to. So I'm very conscious when I talk to friends or other people that have become fathers and they look to me for advice or guidance, is I listen to what they go through and or what they're going through or what they're experiencing. And then if I've experienced similar, I try to draw on specific situations that I've encountered and I have handled, and I talk about how I handle them. And I always say to them, like, I'm not telling you to handle your situation like this because your child might respond in a completely different way. But think about this, think about that, think about the other, and what the outcome is from all of this. So I try to steer away as much as I can from that kind of generic, it gets worse, or you should be glad you're at that stage. You wait till you get to this stage. I try to just steer clear of that, unless I'm making a joke, of course. Then that's a different thing. But yeah, really recognizing that your child is an individual, and no one actually. Yes, there's generic things that children go through, or fathers experience, or parents experience, but your situation at the end of the day is your situation, and it's very unique. So I can't tell you how to handle it. I can listen to you, I can tell you what I did or what I've done, but I can't necessarily I can't take your fear away or your worry away at the end of the day.
Quite a unique perspective of just really listening to someone, because a lot of I've had this, a lot of fathers will just, a lot of people, not just fathers, people will just just tell you this is how it's going to be, this is what it's going to, they try and that's it. I think a lot of people, when they are encountered with a fear around parenthood or fathering, or generally maybe, but in this instance, they'll try and give you some certainty. Like, this is how it's going to be. This is what you can expect, in the idea that the certainty will alleviate your fear. Your fear is about the unknown nature of things, which isn't always the case for us, right? Our fear could be about something very specific. And it's this kind of way in which we interact with people often. Is like we give people the thing that we would want if we were them, and not necessarily paying attention to what actually they need in that moment. But it's what you're saying there, what you do is very different, because a lot of people just like, no, it's going to, you're going to be fine. You don't need to worry about anything, which actually is kind of the opposite of listening. It kind of just shuts down the kind of conversation around the fear and what's underneath it and why it might be there.
Yeah. And it's interesting you say that, because like not many people do that, especially around parenting. Not many people really listen to the stage you're at. And I think because child development and the stages of childhood follow very similar patterns. You think you know it all, where in actual fact you don't. Like even between my two children, they've gone through the stages of childhood at very different times and very different paces. And they're very different. Like some of the stuff my eldest would do, my youngest didn't necessarily go through some of those stages, and vice versa. So like those things then end up tripping you up if you're so certain about things. This is going to happen, and when it happens, this is what you'll see. It trips you up when you get there if it doesn't happen, or if it happens earlier. Like my eldest is like, he's been going through teenage stage like a lot earlier than some of his friends or some of my friends' children. And if I was thinking, oh yeah, 12, I'll start to get 11, 12, I'll start to get this and I'll start to get that and we'll experience this, I'd have been completely tripped up when he became like, that grumpy teenager earlier than, some of his friends. I would have been tripped up. So I think, yeah, listening to what stage people are at and what they need in that moment is so important in parenting, full stop.
Being with what's actually happening now, the being present with what's happening, not the story of how you think it should be or how someone else has told you how it's going to be or how you should be responding. Actually, like I'm hearing there is like actually being deeply present with your child and responding to them as they are in this moment.
Yeah. I mean, you said your child's 1, right? So I could tell you this is going to happen, that's going to happen, but none of it may come true, or some bits may come true, or might happen in a completely different way. So if you came to me and said, looked for guidance or advice, I could say to you, you'll be fine. But I'm not saying you'll be fine in a case of you've got it all handled, you don't need to do anything. Those can only that kind of advice can only come from conversation, like deeper conversation than just how do I handle a three-nager or whatever it might be. I think connection, particularly between fathers, is missed and skipped a lot. That deeper connection, that deeper level of conversation is just glossed over a lot for dads, I think, which is why things like this podcast is so important. Books that people have written on that are talking to dads specifically. There's loads of groups now that cater for dads. That is invaluable in a lot of cases.
Yeah, 100%. I think even from what I've seen, my partner, she's in this group. It's like a WhatsApp group for mothers in our area. They're in like Northeast London, Essex area. And she's never shown it to me, but she'll just say, oh yeah, a woman today was looking for this thing. She needed one of these today. Actually, she told me a story actually. There's a woman, she was like, something about breast milk, and she was looking for some breast milk because her baby, she had started to dry up, and also kind of narrated to me what happened within 24 hours. Within 24 hours, this woman had about 7 offers from different women who were like, oh, yep, I've got a surplus. I got loads. Like, how old's your baby? About same age as mine. Like and then had a delivery. Within 24 hours, she had this huge delivery of breast milk to go into the freezer to use. And I was like, wow, isn't that incredible that there's this group that basically can source anything? There was one day we wanted a travel pram. We were going to Sri Lanka in a week's time, and we're like, we want a travel pram. She was like, so no need travel prams. We want to get one. What recommendations? 2 days later, we're around the corner, literally around the corner. We could have walked there to pick up a travel pram. Like, it was just this amazing, like, hive mind of being able to source things. And I was talking to her and I was like, so interesting that there's not the same group in the area for men. And I was saying about we did antenatal classes with NCT. And I was like, it was really interesting, the NCT class for the guys, the WhatsApp group. I was like, they don't talk. Like, they've just stopped talking. Like, I fired a few messages into like talk a few times. And there's this like feeling that dads don't connect with each other. So I guess it comes from kind of these old tropes that being a father is, and I'd love to get your thought on this, being a father is kind of something that gets added on to like what you're doing already, which is like breadwinner, worker, whatever, but it doesn't become maybe such a central pillar of your identity because, you know, you're not going to take time off. You're still going to work, and there's people you could work with that would have no idea that you had a child, for instance.
Yeah.
I'd love to get your thoughts on why you think that is.
Yeah, I think we're still dealing with legacy and age-old tropes and stereotypes. We're still dealing with it. Even, you know, raising two boys, you still see some of the things that are said to them, you know, out and about or in class or at school or at clubs, etc. Like the expectation on them is still the old school, you know, expectation. And thankfully, we make a point of raising our boys to actively challenge those things. But I think as dads, we're still, however many years later, still working that out. And I think it's so deep within us that you have to actively fight against it. It's so easy to fall into that. Yeah, like we don't talk, you know, we talk about, I see it part of WhatsApp groups, like I've been part of groups of dads, men, etc. And it's like football, anyone going out, football, like, and that's the level they can talk. And all of my friends know, don't come to me and start a conversation about football because I don't like football anyway. But I say to them, like, I'm not about like, this is, we can talk about other things. There are other things happening that we can talk about. But it's so easy to go to a default, and that way it distracts you from really talking about what you want, what you're struggling with, what you need, all of those things. It's kind of, sometimes it's a distraction, I think. But yeah, to your point, like it is, the fatherhood role is still bolted on to everything else. And I think people get shocked when they see a dad who is very active in their child's life, who is going to parents' evening. You know, in my school, if something happens, we've had a few things where I've needed to contact the school and sort out some issues, and it's been me. So they've been interacting with me. Sometimes it's my wife, sometimes it's me. And you see not the shock, but the kind of like registering of, okay, yeah, dad is active. Dad is the one I go to for this, that, and the other. And people are still dealing with that. People are still like kind of wrapping their heads around that kind of situation. So I personally think it's going to be a while. It's going to be our generation of dads, I think, are really there to break age-old kind of tropes, age-old stereotypes. Like, I think that's what we're here to do. It'll still remain for generations to come, but yeah, I think we'll start to see a big shift in the next generation.
It's that trope of the present but absent father. Like he's there, he's in the house, but he's not actively engaged in fathering. He's just like he's in this very traditional role of providing, and he's around. You might see him every so often. You know he exists, but like emotionally he's not engaged. He's not, like you say, doesn't go to parents' evening. He's not calling up the school to sort out any uniform, or he's not, you know, he'll show up at a football game maybe, and like everyone's like, oh, you got a great, you know, you've got a great father, or even worse, he's really is absent. Like he really is not really involved. That's the kind of old trope. And I guess added to that is there's even a stronger stereotype of the black father, right? And the kind of absenceness of that. Like I, you know, talk about my own childhood, you know, I've said this to, you know, my partner often. It's like, I grew up and I didn't really know any like black fathers that lived in the house with their children. You know, it just wasn't something we see. And there's a very standard, you know, stereotype of black men of like, they're not around for their kids. They don't father their kids. They're not in the house. They're not married, like all these sorts of things. Even so much so, like, you know, he's only 1 year old, and people see me around the area because I walk around with him in a sling a lot of the time, or the baby Bjorn. And like people are just like light up, like, oh my God, you're always out with him. I'm like, oh yeah. He's like, he's my child. I take him out. Child. But I guess my question is like, how's that impacted you? How has that stereotype that's not necessarily been true for you, and even the experience that you had from your own father, have you felt that that's kind of almost loomed or weighed on you?
Yeah, I think because like my dad's always been around, so I know no different. You know, he's been there for everything that I've kind of done. He would still be in that more in that traditional dad role, but he was there, or like he's been there my whole life. But I think that is one of the reasons why I started blogging about fatherhood, because I would go on. I used to blog for like a website, and then I would go on Instagram, and I would see like the rise of daddy bloggers, and I would engage with it because I was at that stage in my fatherhood journey, and I was like, yeah, let me listen to similar experiences, etc. But what I noticed is that daddy bloggers were all white. That it was white men talking about their experience, which is great. You know, it's fatherhood is kind of universal, but there are some differences. And what I didn't see as representation. So that's ultimately why I started my Instagram. And I thought, let me just put my face out there, as well as my fatherhood journey, so that people can see that actually it is a norm that there's a black dad in the house with his child, with his partner, etc., 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 and going through all of the things. And ultimately, when, you know, fast forward to BLM 2020, I had loads of people. I had like 10,000 people join my account overnight, literally. Like, I think it was over 2 nights. I woke up with thousands of people, and a lot of people, it was kind of, I don't want to say a novelty, but it was like someone different, a different voice in that space. So I was able to connect with most of my following are mums, you know, because that's just the nature of Instagram, I think. But white mums make up, you know, the majority of my following, and I have lots of conversations, and they have lots of conversations with me, and I think that really starts to break down kind of those expectations or those stereotypes of kind of black dads. And since then, there's been a number of black dads that blog and that put themselves out there, and it's amazing to see. Like, I love seeing all of it, and I love connecting. But yes, the stereotype is still there. It's hard to break. It's going to be hard to break, and it's not actually true. It's not percentage wise. It's not true. But you know, those are the things that people want other people to believe. So I just think I just do my bit to to kind of help break down those stereotypes, and it's why I'm so vocal. It keeps me so vocal about what I do. It might seem, you know, unimportant to somebody that I am going to the school to sort out a problem, or going with my child to their dentist appointment or their doctor's appointment, or, you know, whatever it might be. That might seem just a small thing, but some people need to see that there's a point, there's a reason why I'm doing it, and doing it publicly. I'm not just doing it to say, hey, look at me, like I'm a dad doing something. I'm a dad, you know, pulling my weight, because that should be a basic expectation. I'm doing it to start to shift perceptions.
Mm. And it does, doesn't it? Because so many men have grown up with, like, their mum does all those things, right? Schools, doctor's appointments, all the like logistics and arranging stuff for children, buying clothes,
Yeah.
all those things. And just one man seeing you, like, in the shop, you know, going to the doctor, in the dentist, like, one man seeing that is like, oh, I could do that. You know, it's an unconscious kind of barrier that we have, like, oh, that's not something I do as a man or a father. And sometimes all it takes is to see one man doing it, and you go, oh, actually, I could do that. And we don't even realize that we had this unconscious idea that it's something we kind of, quote unquote, can't do or not allowed to do.
Or avoid. Yeah, or avoid doing. It's the age-old thing of changing nappies. Like, I would change nappies. I didn't even think twice about changing nappies. Yeah, I had to be taught how to do it well, but that didn't take long. And, you know, 2 or 3 goes, and that was it. Like, I would always change nappies, and then my wife, no, she'd be able to say to me, nappy needs changing, done. She could chill or do whatever she's doing, and nappy would be changed. But that's a very kind of obvious and stereotypical thing, but it's something that still people will say, I don't change nappies, I don't do that. That's that's not for me. That's not for the man then. That's not for whatever it is that they're kind of saying. It's nonsense, and it's an avoidance, not a it's not that you can't do it, it's that you're choosing not to do it.
Mm. Do you think there's a fear underneath that for a lot of men of how they'll be perceived, or what it will mean about them, or like even it could even, or even that because it's something that they never saw their own father do that it kind of shakes their identity, or even causes them to look at their father slightly differently as a man, as a father?
Yeah, I think it's a mix. I really think like some people literally just don't want to do it. They don't want to pull their weight. It's so easy to say, I do this, you do that. This is a dad's role, that's a mum's role, because it's very clear and it's easy. You wake up every day. It's like the same. Like entrepreneurs say, they have the same outfit in their wardrobe because it takes a choice out of their life. Like I feel like for men, it's just easy to say that's a mum's job. Like I don't do that. But yes, other things come into play. Like they haven't had that role model that they've seen do that. Therefore, they don't think that it's something they should do or can do. Um, some is still this messaging that is so strong, particularly on social media and in the media, of masculinity and what that means and what you should and shouldn't do as a man. Like for me, there's a lot of we're Christians, so the man leading the home is still quite a big thing, but leading the home means so many things. Leading the home doesn't mean coming home and having your dinner cooked for you and you going out for work and that's all you do. Leading the home is in every aspect of pulling your weight, doing all of those, whether it be chores, whether it be appointments, whether it be organizing, whether it be arranging. My son's birthday was a few weeks ago, and I just said to my wife, right, I'll organize the party. I'll organize the gift bags and the presents and all of that kind of stuff. And she was like, cool, you do you. Let me just chill. I'll go along with what you do. She was like, yeah, cool. And all of that comes into being a husband, being an active father, etc. But some people just take the easy route out and just say that's not my job. But yeah, I hold people to account, and I just think there's no excuse unless what you are doing is so consuming and beneficial to the family that you can't do those things. That's a different story. That's a different story altogether. But if your sole job is to be a breadwinner, for example, you're still coming home, you're still wearing clothes, using dishes, you've still played a part in giving birth to a number of children or one child, you're still taking up space, so you contribute to that. It's no one's job to look after you. And that's another thing with I feel like, and I'm not generalizing, but I feel like there's a section of men that get married and have a partner but still want to be looked after, like their partner's their mum or their caregiver, and that is a crisis in itself. There's still men that think that, oh yeah, I'm cool now, I'm going to be looked after. You need to look after yourself, and you've got other people to look after. So yeah, I think that's the section. So there's I believe it's so complex and so complicated that you can't just pinpoint it being one thing as to why men struggle with taking responsibility with those things.
Yeah, really multifaceted.
And I'm not perfect, I'm trying. It's a conscious effort, sometimes, like, for example, I don't cook a lot, so I can cook and I do cook, but I don't cook a lot. My wife cooks mostly, and then sometimes I sit back and I think, like, I really should make an effort in that department. She's better than me, at doing it, but I think I really should make an effort in that department. So, but then on the flip side, I think, okay, if I do this instead, which I'm good at and I can do, that still contributes, that still makes everyone's life easier, that still contributes to everyday living, that we kind of balance out that way. But some people would just say, hey, you cook and I eat. There's still that mentality.
Yeah. I know some guys who have the mentality of I don't do those things. I make money. That's my job. Your job is basically everything else. um, and it's not my opinion, but I think it's interesting that what I'm seeing more and more, especially in my coaching work, is like there's a shift that's happening more and more, I think, in the relationship space, especially people wondering, of like a desire to have a very clear cut, like gender roles in relationship. I'm seeing this shift to people desiring. I see it with my clients who are on dating apps, for instance, saying that they're seeing women say, I want a masculine man who, like a traditional masculine man, for instance, right? Which I think when we hear those words, we think of provide, protect. Really, those are the kind of, procreate kind of comes into it, I guess, to some degree. And obviously providing and protecting are incredibly nuanced, like ideas but I think it's really interesting. We're seeing this almost, I kind of joke with some friends that I chart it through Destiny's Child and Beyonce, right? So Bills came out when I was quite young. So it's still this like,
Yeah.
I want a man to pay my bills, right?
Yeah,
I still
yeah,
want
yeah,
this man to provide for me. And then she dropped Independent Woman, right? Destiny's Child, Independent Woman, I don't need no man. And I feel like
Yeah.
someone's going to remix Bills soon. And it's going to come
Yeah,
back
yeah,
because
yeah.
we're seeing this kind of swing from and I'm not saying this for all women, but I'm definitely seeing it. Especially I look at the last kind of my work of coaching men over the last kind of 5-10 years, and they're like, oh, this is interesting. Like we're seeing this kind of swing back against the kind of equality. I say inverted equality because equality is a very complex and nuanced piece, but this desire for like very rigid in many ways and very clear cut gender roles, which, it is what it is, right? People want what they want, and for the reasons they want it are very complex. But what I'm hearing from what you're saying here, actually, and it's something that my partner's mum once said to us, is like playing to your strengths, playing to what you're good at is like what it actually is a maximum benefit, not just like having it like it has to be really fixed and rigid, or we have to split everything 50-50.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, women are not a monolith. So it's about figuring out, that I know people that will have a very traditional home, like go out to work, and both the man, let's talk about traditional heteronormative relationship, man woman. There's in those kind of gender roles, there are women that they want to stay home, take care of the kids, do all those things, and they want their partner to go out and provide for them, etc., etc., etc. They found each other great, but I feel like a lot of people now, men now, are expecting that in advance. So they're not, and women as well, are expecting something from their partner in advance. They're not meeting people that they have a connection with and then figuring it out from that point. It's kind of like, this is what I want. And this is where toxic masculinity and all of that comes in with, I don't ever say his name, but specific well-known personalities that drive that. That's where there is, whoever I find, it doesn't matter who I find, they need to do this, 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 and this, and they need to be this, 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 and this. Well, you can stay single forever because that's not the way the world works. So I feel like, and that still creeps in, my expectation between both men and women, my expectation of my partner is that, and it's great to have, I'm not talking about standards. Standards are one thing, but there's expectations of who your partner should be and how they should conduct themselves that I think people are kind of getting wrong in a sense. Not that I'm single and I know anything about the dating world at the moment, but it's just from what I see when you look at Love Island, when you look at those particular influencers, when you look at all of the things that people are engaging with and the online commentary, it's that you're not even meeting someone before you figure out whether they're right or wrong for you or whether they match your values. You're putting up all of those things beforehand, and then that's when it's easy to slip into those roles. I'm a man, I do this. I'm a woman, I do this. Well, I don't even think women think like that. I think because of the history of how women have fought for their rights, I don't believe there's many sections or groups or communities of women that think I need to do this, I need to be in this role, and this is my cage and this is my lane. I think they're more open to switching things up.
Yeah, I'd agree.
But to be honest, I say like women have been put in a position for so long and dictated to for so long that yes, they can have their bills. Yes, they can change their mind and want to be independent. Yes, they can go back to bills. Yes, they can dictate a lot more because traditionally they've never been allowed to do that or been able to do that. So let them say what they want.
No, 100%. Allows people to. I see this exact same thing with dating. People come with a shopping list of what the person has to be, do, and be about, and they forget that they're actually looking for a human being. Yeah. And that human beings aren't shopping lists. They're not cyborgs that you can choose all the bits and pieces, robots. Not quite yet. We're not far off that point, but we're not going to get there anytime soon. We're not shopping lists. We're human beings that have a lot of stuff underneath that actually is the things that make relationships work. Like you spoke of something that's really important that so often I see that people miss when they're thinking about relationship is like a values alignment, like an alignment in values, which actually makes that shopping list seem far less important, People might go, I want someone who's degree educated, they come from a family who of certain wealth and blah, 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 but they don't explore, like, why do I want someone who's degree educated? I want someone who's intelligent, that I can have interesting conversation with, that can stimulate me mentally and emotionally. Well, that's very different from a degree. The degree is just a thing that people go and get. We don't think of the kind of deeper underneath piece we're looking for. Well, I want someone who is wealthy. So, well, actually, you have a wound about money and security. So what you actually want, you want someone who's financially secure, which isn't necessarily wealthy. There's wealthy people out there that are terrible with money and they spend it badly and they get into debt. But you could just meet a dude who's really clued up and knows how to budget really well and who's ambitious as well. And I think that's what happens in this dating pool that I see a lot, that people lose sight of the actual substance and they look for the trappings of what they think the thing they're looking for. They're not aware of the thing underneath themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something like that I am, again, because I've got two boys, like that is one of my real kind of focus areas. Like I'm very conscious of that and how they grow as men and what their expectation of the world is, what their expectation of other people is, their partners, their chosen partners, whatever, like friends, relationships, etc. I'm very, very conscious to allow them to be who they want to be and not necessarily what someone dictates, what society dictates, or I just don't want them to put people in boxes and think that life has to be this way and this way only. It can be their way and how they choose to navigate and manage their relationship, etc. Because I think for young boys specifically, it's a very dangerous time to be raising boys. It is such a minefield, and we could easily get it wrong. I did a post a few weeks ago about that we're not the only one parenting our children. And it's back in the day, you might have family members or close friends of your parents that also parented you. Now you've got strangers on the other side of the world that are feeding into how your child sees the world. And I'm not talking about necessarily even young children, like even teenagers or young adults. They're bombarded with, this is how you should be, this is what you should expect. Like I mentioned, Love Island, for example. Like I know people of that age that watch Love Island, males that watch Love Island, and then they start talking and regurgitating things and they expect their life to be like a reality TV show when that is very orchestrated situations. But in their minds, this life, is what I consume all the time. That's how you should be with women. You should be in a love triangle, or you should be the one dictating how they should be because you're in control. You know, I want to choose that woman or that woman. It's my decision. They don't get a choice in who I'm with, etc., etc. It's that raising boys, like I say, it's a very tricky time to do that at the moment.
And how do you speak to them about these? Because, like, you know, you're raising young Black boys. There's the influence of like these very prominent masculinity influences, should we call them, right? There's this real loud voice of that. And then there's the education around things like race, even class, you know, it can be important, and history and so forth. That there's a lot for boys, for young Black boys to understand their place, the history that's kind of being pushed on them, these people's biases towards them, but also then this like new piece that he said is like this very, very new, because, you know, now you just go on YouTube and it will just keep feeding you more and more of the thing it thinks you want. The algorithm just feeds into you. How do you have conversations about all these kind of different aspects to life with your young boys?
Yeah, I think, well, firstly, I'll separate like real life and digital, because I think they're kind of two very big, very separate conversations. I think the in real life stuff is it is a minefield, but it's also easier to have those conversations because it's there, it's in front of you, it's happening. My children were introduced to racism, for example, at a very young age through not our desire, but just through outside kind of influence, and they experienced going through that very young. So they were very aware, and I think at that point we just made the decision that we will do it age appropriately, but they can know anything that they want to know. They can ask us anything they want to ask us, and we will respond in an honest but age appropriate way. We did reading around it. We had conversations around it. Even misogyny. We have conversations around misogyny. You know, my 8-year-old, well, he does know the term misogyny now, that when we had the conversation, we didn't necessarily use the term misogyny, but we just started off talking about like pink and blue, what that means. Can boys wear pink, girls wear blue, etc.? Yes, of course they can, because they're just colors. They actually mean nothing. And actually, on the pink and blue thing, it was only yesterday that my eldest told me he was at his friend's house yesterday morning, and they were playing, and his sister had a blue ball, and the brother had said, no, you need to give that to my son, because you need to have the pink one. And my son actually stopped in front of their parents and said, that was a very stereotypical and sexist thing to say. And the parents were like, yeah, you're right, actually, you're right. That was, anyone can play with any, but he's very, and that's because we are very open with them. And we want them, because a lot of times these stereotypes are actually barriers, and they're there for a reason. They're there to stop you being who you want to be and progressing where you want to progress to. They're there to stop you being the best of who you are. So we try to get those out as much as possible. And then the digital space is something we are still tackling because it's ever evolving. But again, I have very strong and clear boundaries when it comes to my children and digital, because, like you say, the algorithm doesn't really care. You will accidentally click on something or listen to something and halfway through realize it's against your values. And then the next video will be the same thing. The next video will be the same thing. And all of a sudden, you're kind of consumed with that. So my children don't have social media. They appear on my social media in a very managed kind of way. They don't have access to their own social media, apart from my eldest has WhatsApp, and that is policed very heavily by me and my wife, because it just opens up the whole world, access to anything, any information. And we see it even at the young age of 11, which is what my eldest is. Like, some of his friends have accessed social media, TikTok, etc., and they're creating WhatsApp groups for just boys. And it's not just for boys to support each other, like we were talking about, men need support. It's just for boys so they can talk about girls. And that is at 11 years old. Um, he's not part of that. He knows he could never even entertain being part of that, but that's happening at 11 years old. And that is a breeding ground for poison, and, you know, stuff that we don't want our children accessing. So we have very strong, but the conversations are not easy. I wish I could say, yeah, we talk, you know, we sit around and we talk about, you know, social media and how it's this and it's that, and how you've got to have, you know, we've got to be safe online. It doesn't go like that. It goes like, I want to be part of the WhatsApp group. Everyone else is part of the WhatsApp group. No, you're not going to be part of the WhatsApp group. This is why. But why? Nothing has happened. And it's not a kumbaya moment. It's a battle. It is a battle because to them, they're being left out. They're missing out on something. They're missing out on what other people are experiencing. To us, we know the dangers. So the conversation and the battle, as I call it, is ongoing, but I'm not letting my guard down with those things. It just takes one thing, one poisonous thing to get in front of them on social media or in a WhatsApp group, and you're dealing with that for a long time. The impact of that is a long one. So yeah, it's not an easy ride, man. It's not. But yeah, that's kind of what we're doing at the moment.
Yeah, and it's so hard. I'm not even anywhere near that, right? I'm just so hard because, you know, kids are so adamant of like, I'm missing out, like so and so's parents let them be in there, like we're not talking about anything, we're just talking about sport and this, you know, in a way that, you know, look back to when I was younger and I used to hang out with a group of boys and we would talk about certain things, and you know, some of it was healthy and at times it wasn't particularly healthy. And you know, inherently boys will not, I don't want to say boys will be boys because I don't think that's necessarily the right sentence. Like groups will form and young people are exploring themselves and what it means to be a boy, a girl, a human being, a 12-year-old. But you know, there's this online piece that we didn't have to deal with, which, like you said, it opens up to a world, but it opens them up to a world without discernment. They don't have the capacity for discernment.
Absolutely.
And I guess that's the question for you I have is around media literacy, right? Because, you know, you work in media, you understand how this landscape works. And I've been into some schools and talked to young boys, you know, secondary school age, about this sort of content. And one of the things I've seen multiple times is like, oh, you don't know how to like look at some content and like be discerning and go, oh, what's real, what's not real, what's underneath it. So I guess the question I have is, and this might be something you haven't done yet, you're thinking about in the future, is like, how do you teach your young boys, young children, media literacy, and to start to have this discernment and questioning of the things that are the information they're receiving?
Yeah. That is ever evolving. Like my children are fortunate in the fact that I do work in it and I've worked in it for a while and I do it myself. So I've come across things and I'm aware of things that maybe other parents that don't work in that industry aren't aware of. And I never judge a parent for not knowing what they don't know, like, because it changes every single day. I don't know if you watched Adolescence, but even that, I know there's a lot of talk around that, but even that, there's one scene that I think is probably, it got overlooked, but it's one of the most prominent scenes. And that's when the dad is asking the son what certain emojis mean. And that is an example of how quickly this social media and internet culture moves, is that you can't keep up. But the way I would always tackle it and talk to anyone about tackling social media is, unfortunately, or just the online world in general, digital, is unfortunately, you're going to have to get deep in. You're going to have to throw yourself in and work stuff out, and work it out for yourself. So, for example, my children now, because I work in it, they can watch, they've got certain YouTubers that they're able to watch, and they can watch those. and they can say whether a video is clickbait or not, and they can say whether a scenario is a setup scenario or it's not set up. And that's because I don't necessarily work in YouTube, but I take my time to really understand what these YouTubers are doing and how that impacts me as a viewer. So things like pranks, my children know they can't just walk on the street and do a prank to someone and not necessarily get punched in the face, for example. And I have to teach them a lot of these, their specific YouTubers that they watch. They're not just random people on the street. They're people that they've picked out that know the prank is going to happen, and they set it up, and then it's a fake reaction and all of that kind of stuff. It's not necessarily, people. There are people that go out there and prank random people, but they're YouTubers that they watch. They know the setup scenarios. They know that, for example, YouTube families that have loads of money and they flaunt that on YouTube, and then your children expect 5 PS5s for their birthday and to go to Hawaii and do all of this nonsense. They know I've taught my children what those children have sacrificed, or what those families have sacrificed to be able to do that. They don't just sit around, go to school, watch what they want on TV, lie on their beds, have a lie in on a Saturday, etc. They get up and they are filming day to night, all night. If they do something wrong, they have to do it again. They don't get downtime, and that's what they've sacrificed in their life to be able to do that. So again, they're aware of things like that. They know what's clickbait. They know what's not necessarily clickbait. So that for me is helping with their age appropriate kind of discernment at that level. Okay, I'm watching a YouTuber. He's got that money because they do this, this, and this. They they are pranking these people, but it's not real. These people know it's going to happen. They know they're going to get slime in their face or water drenched all over them or whatever it might be. They're already prepared for that. All of those things, I think, helps their discernment, so that when they move on to the next level of their kind of social media or digital journey, they're able to take that and level it up. So with this certain misogynistic kind of character, they can start to read into, okay, he's only saying that because it'll get him more views, because it's clickbait. He knows that if he says that outrageous thing, he doesn't necessarily believe it, but he knows it'll get him paid through the TikTok creator program, for example. So it's all of those things that I'm teaching from this age, so they can take it onto the next level and the next level and the next level. But I would say parents, it's not something where you can say, oh, I've done a little bit today, I'll pat myself on the back. It's unfortunately, it's something you have to just keep on learning and be curious about. Watch, you might see screaming YouTubers or on TikTok screaming TikTokers or whatever it might be, but sit and watch it. Like, watch it the whole way through, see what they're saying, understand what they're saying and why they're saying it. Look at things like monetization. A lot of YouTubers and TikTokers, they're doing it for cash. They don't necessarily believe the stuff they believe. They're just doing it for cash because it's a way to make money. Like, understand all of that stuff. That was a long-winded answer to your question, but that's kind of what my train of thought with that.
But no, it's a really powerful answer, right? Because you've obviously through your work, but you've really dived into understand the underlying mechanics and what's going on. So it's not just you guys, don't watch that's bad, but explaining, and you've taken understanding and then delivered that understanding to them so that they can be discerning, and that for each level of taking in media and information, they have a base level understanding of how to break something down and look at it in ways that, just be honest, grown adults don't have that level of discernment with kind of digital media.
And exactly. And on that point, I think one thing to realize off the bat is that children are not safe online. They're not safe online. They have to practice safety, but they're not safe. And if you go in with that expectation, and like you say, it's not about cutting them out of things, because of course, age appropriate, that's very important. But within that, it's not about saying no and shutting them down, because they will come across something that impacts them. They will. It's inevitable. You need to understand that. But it's about when they see that thing, what are they thinking? What do they remember from what you taught them? How do they process that information? You want to give them those tools and that basis and actively do it. Watch, like I mentioned about YouTube, we watch it with them and I'll say, why did they do that? Why do you think they did that? Why do you think that was, we'll laugh along and we'll engage with the stuff with them, but we'll also question them as we go. And we will talk about that until we all come up with an answer. We won't just kind of let it go. But yeah, I think understanding that children aren't safe online, social media companies, etc., that's not their primary goal. It's not their priority. It's about you helping them be safe online, helping them navigate their safety online.
Yeah, powerful. It's just that I just see this creating this discerning mind that can look at things and make sense of things and ask really powerful questions, because I think one of the things that I feel like I grew up with is just like not knowing. Don't ask questions. Asking questions is bad. Shut up and listen and do what you're told. But like this questioning mind creates I hope to say, I don't know for sure, creates an adult who is able to take in information and look at the world in different ways and from different angles, instead of just being a follower of like, oh, that's what that said, that must be true. The TV said this thing, so that must be true.
Yeah. And then you come into like AI, and like that's a whole new thing that our children will know more about than us. Eventually they will know how to, because it's hard even to tell, especially someone like I've worked with people that are deep into using AI, especially for video content, etc. And you can't tell voices. You can't tell. So there's that creeping in. But also another thing that is shocking to a lot of people is our children now, they don't have to be famous to be able to make more money on social media than we would ever dream of. Like there could be children in your town, in your street, up the road, next door, wherever, making bank on the internet. Whether it be YouTubing, whether it be starting e-commerce, whether it be whatever, they're doing that kind of stuff more than you can. So again, you cannot shut them away from things, because it could be their opportunity. It could be good for them if you do it safely. But it's like exactly like you said, you have to create a discerning mind to allow them to navigate social media and the digital world.
Yeah. I see time is running away from us, and I just want to ask one just quick question. Actually, this could be super quick. What's something you wish that someone had told you about fathering and fatherhood before you became one?
Such a good question. I don't think I experienced, well, there's two things very quickly. Firstly, I didn't think I would experience the level of guilt that I have to battle against raising my children in this world, and by my actions of kind of what I do or how I react or how I speak to them, etc., etc. I didn't think about that. But on the flip side, I didn't realize how much my heart would grow, how much love I had within me. It's a very strange. I mean, you're a kind of relatively new dad. Like that moment, like you don't know where it comes from. You don't know where that love kind of comes from. And I think some people don't know what to do with that. Thankfully, I kind of got an idea of what to do with that and how to navigate that. But yeah, I think those are the two things: how much guilt and how much abundance of love I would have for these two little people that were running around irritating me all the time, but also are such a blessing towards me.
Oh, thank you, Robert. I'm sure the listeners are wondering where they can find you online, where they can listen to more from you or read your writing as well.
Yeah, so I am Robert J. Douglas on Instagram. That's pretty much my central hub. So Robert J. Douglas, go there, you'll see everything. all my writing, all my ridiculous pictures, ridiculous reels, all of that kind of stuff. Follow me now.
Right. Fantastic. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, listeners. Hope you've enjoyed the episode. If you've really enjoyed it, pass it on to someone. There's probably a father or father-to-be that could really do with listening to this episode, or someone who's dealing with the digital world and their children. They don't know how to navigate it. So, pass it on, show the love, share the love. That's the words I'm looking for. But until next episode, thank you for listening, and ciao, ciao.